What happens when the future you've imagined disappears in an instant? Not gradually, not over years, but in a single moment. A moment so sudden that life divides itself into two parts, before and after. For most of us, the future feels permanent. We make plans, set goals, imagine where we'll be next year, 5 years from now, decades from now. We build our lives on the quiet assumption that tomorrow will at least resemble today. Then life reminds us that certainty is often an illusion. And for Morris Goodman, that reminder came from the sky. Before the accident, Morris was a successful businessman, confident, driven, focused on what came next. Like many people with ambition, he spent his days looking forward, toward the future he intended to build. Then, in 1981, everything changed. While piloting a small aircraft, disaster struck. In an instant, the airplane crashed, metal twisted, glass shattered. The world that had seemed so predictable moments earlier became chaos. When rescuers reached the wreckage, Morris was still alive, but barely. The injuries were devastating. His neck was broken. His spinal cord had been severely damaged. Many of the systems his body depended on no longer functioned normally. He could not move. He could not breathe on his own. A ventilator now performed one of the most basic tasks of human life. Each breath, taken not by him, but for him. The future he had imagined that morning was gone. Not postponed, gone. And yet, as devastating as the crash was, the wreckage would prove to be only the beginning. Because sometimes the hardest part of a tragedy isn't what it takes from us. It's what people begin believing about us afterward. Soon, experts began assessing the damage. Doctors studied the injuries. Specialists evaluated the prognosis. And the conclusions were grim. The predictions were cautious. The expectations were limited. Some believed Morris would never regain the life he once knew, never reclaim the independence he had lost, never escape the boundaries his injuries appeared to impose. To be fair, they were not trying to be cruel. They were examining the facts as they understood them. The facts were severe. The odds were daunting. The outlook was bleak. But there is something unsettling about hearing your future described as though it has already happened, as though the final chapter has already been written, as though possibility itself has narrowed to a single path. Imagine lying in a hospital bed, unable to move, unable to breathe without assistance, listening as others discuss what your life will become, what you will never do again, what you should learn to accept. The crash had damaged Morris's body, but another battle was beginning. A quieter battle. A battle over something invisible, the right to imagine a different future. And though Morris could barely move, though machines now breathed for him, though nearly every visible sign suggested defeat, a question was beginning to take shape, a question that would define everything that followed. Who gets the final say about what is possible for a human life? The circumstances, the experts, the odds, or the person still living the story? At that moment, Morris Goodman did not yet have the answer, but the question had arrived. and it would change everything. For Morris Goodman, the answer would not come all at once. It would emerge slowly, in a hospital room, one difficult day at a time, because recovery is often misunderstood. People imagine recovery as a dramatic breakthrough, a moment, a victory, a miracle, but real recovery usually begins much earlier, in places nobody sees, inside thoughts, inside decisions, inside the quiet conversations we have with ourselves when the world grows silent. And for Morris, those conversations were becoming increasingly important. The reality around him was impossible to ignore. Machines breathed for him. Doctors monitored him. Others helped him perform tasks he once completed without a second thought. Life had become smaller, far smaller than he had ever imagined. There are losses that take something from your body, and then there are losses that threaten to take something from your identity. This was both. The businessman who once looked toward the future now found himself dependent on others for the simplest parts of daily life. The contrast was difficult, painful, humbling, perhaps even frightening. But beneath the physical struggle, another challenge was quietly taking shape. The challenge of expectation. Around him were intelligent people, experienced people, people who genuinely wanted to help. Yet many of them viewed his future through the lens of limitation, not possibility. Again, they were not villains. They were looking at evidence. The evidence was severe. The injuries were real. The obstacles were undeniable. But evidence and destiny are not always the same thing. And somewhere inside that hospital room, Morris began sensing the difference. At first, it may have been little more than a feeling, a refusal, a resistance, a quiet unwillingness to accept that the rest of his story had already been decided. Not because he knew what would happen. He didn't. Not because recovery was guaranteed. It wasn't. But because something within him resisted the idea that a prognosis and a future were the same thing. And perhaps that's a distinction all of us encounter sooner or later. Because life has a way of presenting conclusions, sometimes through circumstances, sometimes through failure, sometimes through the opinions of others. Messages that quietly suggest, this is as far as you'll go. This is who you are now. This is all that's left. The danger is not that such messages exist. The danger is when we stop questioning them. When we begin confusing a chapter with the entire story. Morris was surrounded by reasons to surrender, reasons to lower his expectations, reasons to accept a future defined entirely by the crash. Yet something remarkable was beginning to happen. Instead of surrendering ownership of his future, he began defending it, not with grand speeches, not with dramatic declarations, but with belief, a simple belief that possibility had not completely disappeared, that there were still pages left unwritten. It is difficult to overstate how important that decision was, because before any visible recovery could occur, an invisible one had to happen first. Before his body could fight for progress, his mind had to fight for possibility. Before he could challenge the limitations around him, he had to challenge the limitations taking shape within him. That was the real battleground, not the hospital room, not the injury, not even the ventilator. The battleground was the space between what had happened and what was still possible. There is a moment in every human life that rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly. The moment you realize the story you were told about your future is not the only version that exists. For Morris Goodman, that realization did not come in a single flash of inspiration. It came through repetition, through effort, through the slow rebuilding of what once seemed permanently lost. There was no dramatic turning point where everything suddenly became easy. No instant transformation where limitation disappeared. Instead, there was something far more human, a gradual widening of possibility. One small sign at a time, one small improvement at a time, one small refusal at a time, refusal to stop, refusal to surrender meaning, refusal to let a prediction become a prison. And over time, something began to shift. What once felt fixed began to feel flexible. What once felt final began to feel unfinished. And that shift changes a human being more than most people realize. Because once you see that a future is not fully closed, you begin to relate differently to everything around you. The body is still healing. The challenges are still real. The past is still the past. But it no longer has exclusive authority over what comes next. And perhaps that is the quiet victory inside Morris Goodman's story. Not that he escaped consequence, but that he refused to let consequence define completion. There is a difference between what happens to you and what becomes of you. That difference is where meaning lives. And Morris began to live inside that space, as someone refusing to let reality become the entire definition of existence. Looking back, it is easy to focus on what was achieved, the recovery, the progress, the return to life in ways once thought impossible. But that misses something deeper. The true transformation did not begin when his body started improving. It began when he stopped accepting that the story had already been concluded, when he stopped treating limitation as destiny, when he stopped allowing external voices to write internal conclusions. That is where the real turning point lived, not in the hospital records, but in the decision to continue imagining a future that had not yet been granted permission to exist. And that is what makes his story more than a medical recovery. It becomes a reflection of something universal. Because every person at some point encounters a version of the same experience. A moment where life seems to narrow, where possibilities feel reduced, where the voice of doubt grows louder than the voice of hope. And in that moment, the question is never really about physical survival. It is about psychological authorship. Who gets to define what your life becomes next? Circumstances or you? Morris Goodman's story does not answer that question with perfection. It answers it with persistence, with continuation, with refusal, and perhaps that is enough. Because not every story is about conquering every limitation. Some stories are about refusing to let limitation become the final definition of who you are. And that is where Morris lands, not as someone untouched by tragedy, but as someone who refused to be completed by it. That verdicts are often premature, that predictions are not prophecies, and that even in the most constrained moments of life, there remains something quietly powerful, the ability to continue, to choose again, to write again, to imagine again, and in doing so, to reclaim ownership of the story, not because the past disappears, but because it no longer gets to decide everything that follows. Morris Goodman did not simply survive a plane crash. He challenged the idea that a single moment could define an entire life. And in doing so, he left behind something far more valuable than a recovery story. He left behind a reminder that the human spirit, even when tested, even when constrained, even when doubted, still retains the quiet power to say, "This is not the end of my story. This is the power of pain where broken stories become unbreakable strength." Thank you for watching.